Imagine for a moment that someone approached you with a business proposal. They slide a thick stack of papers across the table and say, "I want you to sign this contract. Under the terms of this agreement, you will be required to invest a massive amount of your time, your energy, and your financial resources into a joint venture. You will be expected to work tirelessly to fund the operation, maintain the infrastructure, and provide absolute security." Now, here is the catch. The other person involved in this contract is legally allowed to break the agreement at any given moment, for absolutely any reason whatsoever, or even for no reason at all, and if they do decide to walk away, the government will violently step in, force you to surrender half of everything you have ever built, force you to move out of the headquarters you paid for, and potentially force you to continue paying this person a portion of your future earnings for the next decade. On top of all that, if you happen to create any subsidiaries, like children, the other party will most likely be granted total control over them, while you are reduced to a highly taxed weekend visitor. Would you sign that contract? Would any rational, logical, clear-thinking man on planet Earth ever put his signature on a piece of paper that carries that level of catastrophic risk, with virtually zero guaranteed return on investment? Of course you wouldn't. You would laugh that person out of the room. You would think they were absolutely insane for even presenting such a highly abusive, one-sided deal. Yet, every single weekend, thousands of men put on expensive tuxedos, invite all their friends and family, and eagerly sign exactly that contract. It is called modern marriage, and today I am going to tear down the romantic illusion that society has heavily brainwashed you to believe. I am going to expose the brutal, unvarnished truth about why getting married in the 21st century is the absolute most dangerous, financially devastating, and psychologically destructive decision a man can possibly make. If you value your freedom, your hard-earned wealth, and your mental sanity, you need to listen to every single word of this video, because what I am about to share with you will completely change how you view relationships forever. Let us start by completely separating the romantic fairy tale from the cold, hard legal reality. From the time you were a little boy, you have been aggressively conditioned by a highly romanticized society. Disney movies, Hollywood romantic comedies, pop music, and even your own family members have constantly fed you the exact same narrative. They tell you that your life is somehow incomplete until you find the one. They tell you that true success as a man involves getting down on one knee, buying an overpriced diamond ring, and settling down into domestic bliss. But what they conveniently leave out is that marriage is fundamentally a legal and financial contract enforced by the state. It is not about love. Love is an emotion. Love is free. You do not need the government's permission to love someone. You do not need a piece of paper from a judge to prove your devotion. Marriage is the insertion of the state into your private relationship. By signing a marriage certificate, you are literally inviting the government into your bedroom, into your bank account, and into your future. You are giving a biased legal system total jurisdiction over your life's work. To understand why this is a terrible deal today, we have to look at how marriage actually used to work. Historically, marriage was an essential survival partnership. It was a completely vital socio-economic arrangement. The man went out into a harsh, unforgiving world to secure resources and provide physical protection. The woman managed the domestic sphere, raised the children, and created a peaceful sanctuary. It was a balanced trade. Both parties critically needed each other to survive and thrive. Furthermore, society and religion heavily enforced the permanence of this bond. Divorce was extremely rare, deeply stigmatized, and incredibly difficult to obtain. If a man invested his entire life into building a family, he had a massive societal guarantee that his investment was secure. His authority as the head of the household was legally and culturally respected. But look around you. That world is completely dead and buried. We are operating under a totally new set of rules, yet men are still being pressured to play by the old ones. In the modern era, the traditional deal has been entirely shattered. Women have total financial independence, complete access to the workplace, and massive state support systems. They no longer strictly need a man for physical survival or financial stability. And yet, the heavy expectations placed on men have not changed one single bit. You are still expected to be the rock. You are still expected to be the primary provider, the stoic protector, and the ultimate problem solver. But the massive benefits that men used to receive in exchange for carrying that heavy burden, unquestioned respect, domestic peace, authority, and unwavering loyalty, have been entirely stripped away. You are paying the premium price for a service that is simply no longer being delivered. The real weapon of mass destruction in modern marriage is something called no-fault divorce. Before the 1970s, if someone wanted to break a marriage contract, they actually had to prove fault. They had to prove adultery, abuse, or total abandonment. This meant the contract had actual weight. It meant you could not simply walk away and take half of someone's life just because you felt bored. But the introduction of no-fault divorce completely radically altered the landscape of human relationships. Today, a woman can wake up on a random Tuesday, decide she is simply quote-unquote not happy anymore, and completely nuke your entire existence. She does not need a reason. She does not need justification. She can simply claim she needs to find herself, and the legal system will heavily reward her for breaking the contract. Let that deeply sink in for a moment. Marriage is the only legal contract in the entire civilized world where the party who unilaterally breaks the agreement is actually highly financially rewarded for doing so. Statistics consistently show that women initiate roughly 70 to 80% of all divorces. Among college-educated women, that number jumps to a staggering 90%. Why? Because the system is entirely financially stacked in their favour. They are highly incentivized to leave. When a woman files for divorce, she is looking at a massive cash payout. She gets half of your accumulated assets, regardless of who actually earned them. She often gets the marital home. She gets a portion of your retirement accounts and your investments. And in many cases, she gets ongoing alimony. The state essentially forces you to continue funding her lifestyle long after she has abandoned the relationship. You become a non-consenting financial slave to a woman who no longer even likes you. And if you have children, the nightmare is multiplied exponentially. Family courts operate with an overwhelming maternal bias. In the vast majority of cases, primary custody is immediately handed to the mother. You, the father who worked 60 hours a week to provide for those children, are instantly reduced to an ATM machine and a weekend entertainer. You are strictly ordered to pay exorbitant child support, carefully calculated based on your gross income, not your actual living expenses. If you lose your job or your business goes under, the court does not care. If you fall behind on those payments, you can be heavily fined, have your driver's license suspended, and even be thrown in jail. You can literally be incarcerated for failing to fund the lifestyle of the woman who destroyed your family. Meanwhile, the mother has total daily influence over your children. She can easily alienate them against you, move them to a different city, or introduce them to a revolving door of new boyfriends, and you are entirely powerless to stop it. You are legally forced to watch from the sidelines, as another man potentially raises the children you created and the children you are still heavily paying for. Now, some men try to argue that prenuptial agreements solve this problem. They think they can simply hire a good lawyer, sign a prenup, and perfectly protect their assets. This is a massive, highly dangerous illusion. A prenuptial agreement is not an ironclad shield. In today's highly biased legal environment, judges routinely throw out prenups. If a judge decides the agreement is unfair to the woman, or if her financial situation has changed, or if she claims she signed it under duress, that piece of paper is completely worthless. Furthermore, prenups cannot dictate child custody or heavily limit child support. And perhaps most importantly, simply asking for a prenup introduces massive conflict and toxicity before the marriage even begins. You are essentially negotiating the terms of your future divorce while planning a wedding. The very fact that you desperately need a legal document to protect yourself from the person you are supposed to love should be the ultimate red flag that the entire institution is fundamentally unsafe. Let us move away from the legal and financial devastation and talk about the severe psychological warfare of modern marriage. Society pushes a toxic phrase that has completely ruined millions of men's lives. Happy wife, happy life. This phrase is the ultimate manifestation of male subjugation. It implies that your entire purpose, your only path to peace, is to constantly appease, accommodate, and surrender to a woman's emotional state. It teaches men to abandon their own boundaries, silence their own needs, and constantly walk on eggshells to avoid conflict. But the brutal psychological reality is that appeasement never, ever breeds respect. When you constantly bow down to a woman, when you make her temporary happiness the absolute center of your universe, she does not respect you more. She respects you significantly less. Women are biologically hardwired to desire a man who is strong, unmovable, and deeply rooted in his own purpose. When you sacrifice your spine for the sake of peace, you instantly become deeply unattractive. This creates the classic modern marriage paradox. The man bends over backwards to keep his wife happy. He does the chores, he holds his tongue, he pays the bills, and he swallows his pride. But instead of being rewarded with love and intimacy, he is met with coldness, constant nagging, and a completely dead bedroom. Why? Because you cannot negotiate desire. By acting like a subservient people-pleaser, he has completely killed her biological attraction to him. She views him as a highly useful utility, a reliable provider, but completely lacks any visceral, burning desire for him as a man. He becomes a roommate who pays for everything. This is exactly why the vast majority of married men are quietly suffering in sexless marriages. They are living in states of severe chronic touch starvation, feeling entirely unloved, highly unappreciated, and deeply depressed. They look at their lives and wonder why doing everything right resulted in feeling so entirely empty. The truth is, modern society has deeply programmed women to be perpetually dissatisfied. Through constant social media exposure, women are bombarded with highly curated, fake images of perfection. They see influencers living in mansions, traveling to Dubai, and receiving extravagant gifts. This massive overexposure deeply triggers their biological hypergamy, the innate desire to constantly seek a higher status mate. No matter how hard you work, no matter how much you provide, the modern wife is constantly subtly comparing you to the top 1% of men she sees on her phone. There is always a nagging feeling that she could have done better, that she settled, and that you are somehow holding her back from her true potential. You are competing against a completely fabricated digital reality, and it is a game you absolutely cannot win. You will spend your entire marriage on a miserable hamster wheel, constantly trying to prove your worth to someone whose expectations are heavily manipulated by algorithms. When men finally realize they are trapped in this miserable, highly critical environment, their mental health completely plummets. Middle-aged married men going through divorce have some of the absolute highest suicide rates in the entire world. The heavy combination of losing your family, losing your assets, facing the sheer humiliation of the court system, and living in a tiny apartment while your ex-wife lives in your house is simply too much for many men to bear. They are completely broken by a system that extracts all their value and then brutally discards them. Yet society remains entirely deaf to this male suffering. When a marriage fails, the woman is instantly surrounded by a massive support network. Her friends cheer her on, society calls her brave and empowered, and the courts hand her a bag of cash. But the man? The man is completely isolated. He is entirely blamed for the failure. He is told to man up, stop complaining, and just pay the checks. The sheer lack of empathy for male suffering in the context of marriage is absolutely chilling. This brings us to the ultimate societal manipulation, the fear of dying alone. This is the biggest lie they sell you to keep you trapped in the plantation. They tell you that if you do not get married, you will end up as a sad, lonely, pathetic old man, with no one to care for you. But look at the actual reality. Are married men truly less lonely? Go to any suburb in America and look at the husbands. They are sitting in their garages, hiding in their man caves, silently drinking beer, completely desperate for a few minutes of peace away from their wives. Being legally bound to someone who constantly criticizes you, someone who does not respect you, and someone who refuses to touch you is 1,000,000 times more isolating and deeply lonely than actually being physically alone. Furthermore, marriage is absolutely no guarantee that someone will be holding your hand on your deathbed. With the divorce rate hovering near 50% and much higher for second marriages, the mathematical reality is that you are highly likely to end up single in your older years anyway, just with significantly less money and a massive amount of emotional trauma. The modern man who chooses to remain single is not a loser. He is a highly rational, calculated pioneer building what I call the solo empire. When you completely remove the massive financial drain, the extreme emotional volatility, and the catastrophic legal risks of marriage, you unlock a level of freedom and power that most men cannot even fathom. Think about the incredible amount of energy a married man wastes just managing his wife's emotions, arguing over trivial nonsense, and fighting about money. Now, imagine taking 100% of that masculine energy and aggressively channeling it directly into yourself. The unmarried man has total, unrestricted command over his resources. Every single dollar you earn belongs entirely to you. You can invest heavily in the stock market, you can buy real estate, you can start a high-risk business, or you can travel the world without having to constantly consult a committee of one who might completely disagree with your vision. You benefit from the massive power of compounding interest, without the devastating 50% wealth tax of a divorce, slicing your net worth in half, right when you hit your prime earning years. You can achieve total financial independence decades earlier than a married man, simply because you control your own burn rate and you carry absolutely zero legal liability. Beyond the finances, you retain absolute sovereignty over your own physical and mental health. The unmarried man can dictate his own perfect routine. You can wake up at 5 in the morning, hit the gym, eat exactly what you want, and work late into the night building your empire, completely free from the nagging voice demanding to know why you aren't spending enough time sitting on the couch watching Netflix. Your peace is completely protected. When you walk into your home, you are entering a fortress of solitude and absolute tranquility. There is no drama waiting for you at the door. There is no heavy, tense atmosphere. There are no arguments about whose turn it is to empty the dishwasher. You have total, absolute peace of mind. In a chaotic, highly stressful world, that peace is the ultimate luxury, and marriage is almost guaranteed to destroy it. Now, avoiding marriage absolutely does not mean you have to take a vow of celibacy or completely avoid women. This is a massive misconception. You can still have an incredibly rich, exciting, and highly fulfilling dating life. In fact, your dating life will likely be significantly better. When you remove the heavy pressure of the quote-unquote marriage track, you can interact with women purely for the joy of companionship and physical intimacy. You can clearly set your own boundaries. You dictate the terms of the engagement. If a relationship becomes deeply toxic, manipulative, or simply stops bringing value to your life, you can literally just pack your bags, walk out the front door, and never look back. There are no massive legal fees, no dividing of assets, and no bitter custody battles. You retain your ultimate leverage, the absolute willingness and ability to walk away. And ironically, when a woman knows you are not desperate for a legal contract and that you can easily replace her, she is highly likely to treat you with significantly more respect and deeply maintain her physical attraction to you. Society is going to heavily shame you for making this choice. They will call you selfish. They will call you Peter Pan. They will say you are afraid of commitment. But you have to completely internalize that this shaming language is nothing more than a highly manipulative control tactic. Society desperately needs you to get married because society relies on male utility. The government wants you married because married men work harder, pay more taxes, and are vastly easier to control because they have families to lose. Corporations want you married because a man with a heavy mortgage and massive child support payments will never, ever quit his job, no matter how terribly they treat him. Women want you married because it provides them with the ultimate financial safety net and completely transfers the burden of their survival onto your shoulders. Everyone else massively benefits from your marriage except you. Calling you selfish is just their desperate way of trying to force you back into a highly exploitative system. It is time to completely wake up and look at the brutal truth with your eyes wide open. You only get one single life on this planet. Every day is a highly precious, non-renewable resource. Why would you ever willingly sign away your ultimate freedom, your hard-earned wealth, and your mental peace to participate in a massively broken, legally rigged institution that offers you absolutely no protection and zero guarantees? The 21st century has completely revolutionized the way we live, the way we work, and the way we communicate. It is time we deeply revolutionize the way we look at relationships. The smartest, most highly successful men of this generation are quietly recognizing the massive danger of the marriage contract, and they are simply opting out. They are stepping off the highly predictable conveyor belt of society and forging their own unique paths. They are building massive solo empires, cultivating deep, meaningful friendships, pursuing their ultimate passions, and interacting with women on their own strict terms. They are protecting their peace at all absolute costs. Do not fall for the romantic illusion. Do not be heavily guilt-tripped into signing a contract that puts a loaded gun to your head and hands the trigger to someone else. You owe society absolutely nothing, but you owe yourself everything. Keep your freedom, intensely protect your wealth, fiercely guard your peace of mind, and never, ever get married. The men who hear this message and apply it will live lives of absolute abundance and total tranquility. The men who ignore this brutal truth will eventually find themselves sitting in a cold courtroom, wondering how they lost everything they ever worked for. The evidence is completely undeniable. The game is highly rigged. The only way to win is to simply refuse to play. Choose your freedom, build your empire, and never